Hello there, welcome to another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, your resource for helping you break free of the stressful, dogmatic diet and exercise rat race, helping you get in the best shape of your life on your own terms. Matt Schifferly here, founder of the Red Delta Project and author of the book Fitness Independence. Also the soon-to-be-released Smart Bodyweight Training. That'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks. I'll keep you updated on that. Today we're talking about training best for your body type. This is something that is a bit of a debate out there because I think a lot of the old school ways of thinking about body type are due for an update. So I have a different perspective for you today that may very well help you get a better perspective on kind of what type of body you're working around with and where you should focus your attention. Because as I've covered in previous podcasts, your attention is by far your most valuable resource. It's more important than your time and your money and your physical and your mental energy and all that stuff, because where you focus your attention dictates where you spend your time and your money and your energy and so on. And oftentimes within our fitness culture, we're given all these recommendations on you got to eat this way, you got to train this way, you got to do this, you got to do that. And what this does is it kind of makes your attention bob around and move like a cork on the high seas. It's just going with the currents. This can be very detrimental because if your body type demands optimal training or dietary practices, then your attention could be going towards things that don't really matter or apply to you. At the same time, your attention is being robbed from the things that do apply to you. So while you're spending all of your attention and your money and your time and your energy doing things that are supposedly correct or the best way to do it, you're largely wasting your resources while neglecting the things that you really should be doing. And that's why we're doing this. And as I said before, the old adage of body type training often comes under a lot of fire debate because people don't fall into one specific body type. The old way of looking at it was there were three body types. There's the endomorph, which is typically very large, roundish body type, good amount of muscle, good amount of fat. Then on the other end, you've got the ectomorph, pretty lean and lanky individual. And then in the middle, you've got the mesomorph, which is fairly lean, fairly muscular, think amateur bodybuilder athlete kind of individual. And the reason why a lot of people are like, this sucks as far as recommending things, because very few people fall squarely into one particular body type. A lot of us are kind of a mixture and a hodgepodge of body types. So when we have recommendations of eat this way, train that way, then what ends up happening is it doesn't really fit us very well. My new perspective, I think, gives us a lot more simplicity and a clearer vision of what you can do for you best. And that's what we're going to do today. So the first thing that I wanted to do is let's do away with the three body type formula, because I think that's where people are getting kind of messed up. Instead, it's two types of body types, and everybody's along a spectrum. So on one side, you have what I like to call the builder. The builder is that classic endomorphic style body type, fairly large, roundish, big boned, if you will. These are people who are pretty strong, good amount of muscle, decent amount of fat as well. That's the builder. On the other side of the spectrum, we've got the burner. Burner is the ectomorphic type of individual, lean, lanky, hard gainer, if you will. And the mesomorph is just kind of in between. It's the mixture of the two. So the reason why we do it this way is that everybody is a mixture of these two. Just as no exercise is purely anaerobic or aerobic, we're always using both energy systems to at least some degree. Everybody is both a burner and a builder. The purpose of this podcast is to help you identify if you trend towards one side or the other, because it's on a bell curve. Like all spectrums, there's a bell curve. Very few people are going to be very much a builder, and very few people are going to be very much a burner. Most of us are a pretty good mix of the two, and because of a bell curve, the majority of us are going to be somewhere kind of towards the middle. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't trend towards one or the other. For example, I trend towards being a burner. Now, I wouldn't exactly say I'm exclusively a burner, but I kind of go in that direction. So I know where I can focus my attention more on what's most important. And some people trend more towards one a lot, and some people trend towards the other a little bit. And depending on how far to the left or right you are is how much you can focus your attention in one thing versus the other. And we're talking about our attention focusing on various habits, diet and exercise habits. And I'm kind of building this podcast off of the assumption that we're playing the game of I want to be lean and I want to be strong and muscular. This is not the same as building up like performance, like I want to be a better golfer kind of thing. This is doing it under the assumption of pretty much most people, they're like, I want to be leaner, I want to build muscle to some degree. And if that's the case, that's what we're talking about here. Now, recognizing that each one has its own advantages and tendencies is the key here. Because the builder and the burner body type does some things much more as a default and some things less as a default. And so the things that are kind of happening on autopilot, you don't need to spend that much time worrying about. And you want to put your attention more towards the things that it tends to not embrace quite as much. So let's dive into the differences here a little bit. Let's talk about first the burner. Burner, like I said, that's kind of where I trend to be a little bit. The burner is a little bit more set on a catabolic default setting. High energy nervous system. It's like we're always hopped up on caffeine kind of thing. Everything's go, 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 go sort of idea. Our catabolic body type means that staying lean isn't quite as much of a challenge as it is for a builder. We typically don't build fat nearly as much. And if we do build up a decent amount of fat stores, like we eat too much over the holidays, it's not that hard for us to lose it again. It happens almost on autopilot. We don't really need to worry about it too much. Typically, the burner doesn't need to worry too much about the habits that keep them lean. We don't need to be super active to make sure we're burning a ton of calories. We don't need to have super clean diets all the time. In fact, as I get into in a second here, you probably shouldn't have a super clean diet. And we typically can tolerate a wider range of foods, particularly sugars and carbohydrates, a lot better as well. In fact, we're probably better off with a bit more carbohydrate and sugar than most other people. Myself, like I've done the experimentations with various low carb meals, low carb dietary stuff, and it's never produced very favorable results. I don't look very good. I don't feel very good. I don't perform very well. I look kind of soft. I lose my abs. Like it does not vibe by me. But if I have not a high carbohydrate diet, but a moderate carbohydrate diet at least, then I'm leaner, I'm stronger, I'm faster, everything's better. And this kind of makes sense because when your body is tending towards a catabolic nature and your nervous system's going a mile a minute, like go, 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 we can make better use of high octane fuel. Because that's essentially what carbohydrate, especially refined carbohydrates are, it's basically like high octane fuel for the body. Because essentially that's all your body runs off of. The only thing that you can run off of is refined sugars. And you burn fat, you burn protein and stuff by converting it into refined sugar. So we can handle that stuff a lot better than most other individuals. So when it comes to being lean and dietary approaches, we don't need to necessarily spend that much attention on it. We don't need to worry about the slice of chocolate cake. We don't need to worry about having a squeaky clean diet all the time. And we don't need to necessarily be doing cardio all the time in order to stay lean as well. On the other hand, we have trouble building. So what that means is that we need to keep our anabolic habits on point. We need to make sure we're engaging in regular strength training, following usually a structured routine, and focusing on progression and proficiency. So we can't just go to the gym and just mess around with whatever we see as free. We've got to have a pretty darn good plan. Typically, I find that burners usually do fairly well with a fairly higher volume style of training. A little bit higher rep ranges, higher set counts, really just burning the muscle to a very high degree. Usually, that's generalization. Everything for today is generalization. It's just, do you favor this area? And if you haven't been doing this and it hasn't been working for you, then maybe this would be your better way to go. On top of that, anabolic habits in lifestyle are super important. Sleep, critical, crucially important that you get as much sleep as you possibly can, because we're going like gangbusters all the time. And when we crash hard and we sleep deep. So we need to get a good night's sleep. And no, we cannot get by on 5 hours of sleep. And no, we can't make up for it over the weekend. We've got to sleep like it's our job. Number 2 is other lifestyle factors is trying to keep stress at bay. Having a somewhat catabolic set nervous system, things hit us a little bit harder. Stress stays with us a little bit more. Fights with the girlfriend, stressful news, stress on the job, that sticks with us a little bit more, and it's overloading our system a lot more easily. We can't just brush stuff off or get over things quite as quickly and as easily. So avoiding unnecessary stress in life and social situations is also very important. Just try and not hang out too much with negative individuals. Now let's go on the other side of the spectrum. We've got the builder. The builder is kind of the opposite of the burner. The builder is typically someone who's bigger in stature, tends to put on muscle and strength a lot more easily. These are the people who tend to become the bodybuilders and the powerlifters a lot more easily, because they're the ones who they were in the weight class in high school and they're like, oh, I'm going to take weightlifting for gym. And they're like benching 225 on their first day. They're like, what? This is supposed to be hard? Meanwhile, guys like me are like struggling with the bar. And it's like, yeah, it took me like 6 months to work up to 95 pounds. And meanwhile, Joe Schmo over here who looks like he could play football for the Rams is like, yeah, I do 225 for a warm-up. If I have a fever of like 103 and I'm having a really off day, it's like, God damn, Jesus. Like, you're just so strong. But he's a builder. He's a builder. Building muscle is a lot easier for that body type. Just as the burner is going a mile a minute, the builder is typically slower. A sympathetic nervous system slower. So it's parasympathetic nervous system dominant versus the burner is sympathetic nervous system dominant. So for the builder, they can get away with more flexibility in their approach to training. They can go with something like, well, I'll just kind of do what I feel like for today. Today's bench press, but I'll go heavier or lighter depending on how I'm feeling about it. I'll do different types of exercises, keep the body guessing, yada, yada. And they can get away with that. They thrive on it, in fact. Typically, the builder, and as far as training goes, does very well with having more of a heavier approach to strength training. Lower reps, lower volume, burn themselves out fairly quickly within a couple of sets, and they're done. So that's more of the builder side of things. The downside, of course, is the builder struggles to stay lean and lose body fat. So for that regard, the lean habits, the catabolic habits, are super important to stay on point. Number 1, of course, is diet. Gotta have really good, strict dietary guidelines. You can't get away as much with having a more flexible or a carefree diet as you would for a burner. So the junk food, not as much. Not saying that you can't ever enjoy your ice cream or anything, but I'm saying you're going to have to be much more on point for diet. On that note, I've also noticed that a lot of builders typically favor having a lower carbohydrate and sugar-based approach to their dietary habits. These are usually the individuals. It's funny, like I've noticed almost every single person I come in contact with who tells me carbs are terrible, sugar's terrible and stuff, I just look at them and like, yeah, you're more on a builder side of things. You're more of the builder type, the builder size, the habits that you have. Yeah, you're more of a builder. Meanwhile, individuals like me is like, oh yeah, I eat ice cream every single day. It doesn't affect me. I'm like, you're a hard gainer, aren't you? So it's interesting when you recognize these patterns. They keep coming up over and over and over in the people that you meet. So keeping up on the dietary approach is crucial. Keeping calories not necessarily low, but not getting out of control with portion sizes. Also, making sure that your activity levels are on point as well. Like, you can't get away with 20 minutes of cardio 2 to 3 times a week. Instead, being active to some degree on a daily basis is going to be more on your speed. Necessarily, like the activity you do outside of your exercise, going for walks during your lunch break, making sure you're getting 10,000 steps a day, making sure that you're as active as you possibly can be and not relying just on quote unquote cardio as well. So these are kind of the basic dietary and exercise approaches for these 2 body types. Now, your mission is to recognize if you are identifying with a little bit more towards one or the other. Are you a bit more of a builder? Are you a bit more of a burner? If you're a bit more of a builder, then congrats, you're going to build muscle and strength easier. And you don't need to worry about having the exact great, wonderful routine and having your diet and sleep patterns optimized for building muscle. You can get away with a lot more. I can get by with 5 hours of sleep. I can get by with, having a fairly carefree workout style, relatively speaking. Like, great. But you got to be on point for your lean habits, your diet, your activity levels, and so on. If you're like me, you're a little bit more of a burner. Congrats. You don't need to be super clean with your diet. You can have more carbohydrate and sugar probably. In fact, you're probably better off with more carbohydrate and sugar and less of a clean diet, basically because your body can use it and it actually needs it to a large degree. But you need to be on point with your anabolic habits. You got to get sleep. You got to make sure that you're eating plenty of food, and you've got to make sure that your workouts are consistent and as progressive as possible. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a perspective on what may be best for you to keep you as lean and strong and built as possible. Questions, reddeltaproject@gmail.com. Don't forget, please check out my book, Fitness Independence, on Amazon. Paperback and Kindle versions are available. And again, I'll keep you updated on smart body weight training. And thank you, everybody who's been leaving reviews on iTunes. Well, it's not iTunes now. It's Apple Podcasts, I guess. And Google and Stitcher. Very much appreciated. It helps us to spread the word. And also, if you're enjoying these podcasts, then it helps other people find and enjoy the podcast as well. So it's good karma for you all around. I'll talk to you guys next week. Till then, be fit, live free.